In the 2000s, the Pittsburgh Steelers were the standard of the tough, hard-nosed, physical, defensive-oriented teams that defined that era of NFL football. Led by Hall of Fame head coach Bill Cowher, those units featured many stars, such as first-ballot Hall of Fame safety Troy Polamalu, two-time All-Pro inside linebacker James Farrior, and five-time Pro Bowl nose tackle Casey Hampton. But arguably the face and definitely the voice of those teams was none other than Joey Porter. Porter was one of those classic players who was absolutely adored by fans of the team he played for and downright despised by fans of the league's other 31 teams.
Hey, pick your head up. You might be able to block somebody. You wish you could block me. He couldn't block me if he wanted to. I don't care what you do. When it's over, when you go that turnpike, you're going home losing.
The dude was the king of trash talk, going as far as trash talking to the greatest quarterback of all time and backing it up in a road playoff game by almost single-handedly ending the contest himself. He clashed with opposing players of rival teams during games, before games when both active and inactive, in nightclubs in the offseason, and even later on when he was a coach. In classic Steelers fashion, he even has a rule unofficially named after him due to his actions. He didn't even let up with the trash talk in the days leading up to the Super Bowl of all games either. He was always just that confident in both himself and his team. And for good reason. For as much pub as Porter received for his words, he was every bit as good of a football player. Couple his non-stop boasting with elite pass rushing skills, elite run defending skills, excellent coverage ability, and some of the hardest hitting in the league, and what do you get? A nightmare of epic proportions for opposing teams to face off against. Joey Porter was and forever will be a quintessential Pittsburgh Steeler.
They had to kill me to get me off the field. And I know if we win this game, we're right back where we want to be. All right, we ride, we ride, we ride. 1, 2, 3.
While Porter is now viewed as one in a long line of legendary Steelers linebackers, however, it's not like everybody could have seen this coming. In high school, Porter was a two-way player, but he was mostly known as a dominant wide receiver and running back, earning all-conference selections twice at Foothill High School in Bakersfield, California. As a senior, he led his team to the playoffs with a 9-2 record by rushing for 1,086 yards on just 86 carries. That's over 12 yards a pop for all you non-math majors out there. Porter was named All-State and moved on to play at Colorado State at the next level. But again, he was recruited as an offensive player. His first 2 seasons as a Ram were spent as an H-back and wideout, touching the ball a total of 15 times. Porter said he just wanted to contribute to making the team better, and he saw no future for him playing offense. So after quite a bit of time convincing the coaching staff, he swapped sides of the ball prior to his junior season. As he later told the Denver Post, quote, 9 catches a year isn't something they were going to miss. Porter's big hitting nature was noticed almost immediately by coaches in practice. Porter had found his calling, saying, quote, I just felt playing defense, I had my destiny in my own hands. On offense, you have to depend on the QB getting you the ball or a running back blocking for you. But on defense, either you make the play or you don't. And make the play is something Porter did quite often on defense. He notched 6 sacks in his first season on the defensive line, teaming up with future teammate in Pittsburgh, Clark Haggans, to lead the Rams to the WAC championship in a Holiday Bowl win. A year later was Porter's true breakout party as he recorded a whopping 14 sacks, which still stands as the second best single season in school history. He rightfully earned first-team All-WAC honors and was later inducted into the CSU Sports Hall of Fame in 2013. Yet, due to his limited time playing the position and the fact that he was coming from a small school, Porter had to wait until the 73rd pick in the 3rd round of the 1999 NFL Draft before he received that special phone call from a Pittsburgh area code. But funnily enough, that was something that Porter didn't even think was going to happen. He was sure that he was going to be a Dallas Cowboy of all things. He said the team gave him Cowboy shirts and hats, took his family of 15 out to eat at Outback Steakhouse, gave his brother a phone, and told him they were going to take him in the 2nd round. Dallas did indeed call Porter on draft day, but it was not for the usual reason. They called simply because they were going in a different direction and thus needed that phone back. In true Porter fashion, he said, quote, they were on my list to get them from the beginning. To pass on Porter, Dallas instead chose offensive lineman Solomon Page, who lasted 4 measly seasons in Big D. It did not take Porter long to become a fan favorite in Pittsburgh, even though he did not start a single game in his rookie season. In his first year, he was slotted behind the team's 2 starting outside linebackers, Jason Gilden and Carlos Emmons, but he was sure to make a name for himself in the preseason. Well, kind of. You see, Porter dominated the preseason competition, leading the team in tackles with 22 and leading the entire league in sacks with 4.5. However, due to the fact that he wore jersey number 95, and also due to similarities in play style and overall demeanor, all anyone could do was compare him to Greg Lloyd, the 5-time Pro Bowl outside linebacker who had left Pittsburgh a year prior. The rookie became affectionately known as Baby Lloyd by Steelers fans. On the comparisons, Porter said, quote, "It was the best compliment in the world, make no mistake about that. I mean, I loved that. But at the same time, I knew that whole time if I wore number 95, I would never have my own legacy to speak of." So before the start of the regular season, Porter chose to switch to the number 55, for which he would in time make a legacy of its own. Porter started his career with a bang, racking up his first career sack in his first career game, as he put the finishing touches on a 43-0 win over Cleveland with a strip sack of Tim Couch. As the season went along, he received more playing time, culminating in his best game of the year in the finale versus Tennessee, as he had 6 tackles, one of which was a TFL, and a strip sack of Neil O'Donnell, which he recovered and returned 46 yards for a touchdown. Starter Carlos Emmons was a free agent after the season, and after seeing Porter's work in practice and throughout the year, he told the rookie that he was too talented to remain on the bench. He knew one of that he or Gilden would be gone, and after Gilden was extended prior, Emmons left for Philadelphia, leaving a vacant starting position for the talented rookie to fill entering the 21st century. In 2000, Porter took the newfound opportunity and ran with it, without ever looking back. He recorded his first sack of his sophomore campaign in Week 4 versus the Jaguars, which helped the Steelers notch their first win of the season. That game, which occurred on October 1st, sparked what may have been the finest month of Porter's entire career. A week later in New Jersey, Porter essentially sealed another Steelers win with a sack and forced fumble of Ray Lucas in the fourth quarter. Then, Porter blew up versus the rival Bengals. He notched a then career-high 3 sacks, the first including a forced fumble for a second consecutive week. Then he halted a drive in the third with a 10-yard takedown of Achilles Smith on 3rd and 20. And finally, he helped the Bengals find the end zone for the only time all afternoon with a sack and safety of Scott Mitchell late in the fourth of the shutout win. 2 weeks later, Porter notched 2 more sacks versus a division rival, this time in a 9-6 win over the eventual Super Bowl champion Ravens. After starting the season 0-3, the Steelers went 5-0 in the month of October, including 4 wins against divisional opponents, and they allowed a mind-boggling 4.4 points per game during this stretch. It was all spearheaded by Porter, who compiled 12 tackles, 7 sacks, 5 TFLs, 2 forced fumbles, and a safety, earning him AFC Defensive Player of the Month. In the end, Porter finished his first season as a starter with 10.5 sacks, which, combined with Gilden's 13.5, was tied for the second most by a duo in franchise history at the time. But he wasn't just a sack artist either. Porter was a do-it-all linebacker. Against the Titans, he went stride for stride 20 yards down the field in coverage and came up with an interception. He also scored his second career touchdown on a fumble recovery versus the Eagles in the fourth quarter. However, despite Porter's breakout year, what is most remembered from that 2000 season is a sequence from special teams. In Week 2 versus the Browns, the 2 Steelers edge rushers decided to make that September 17th the worst day of punter Chris Gardocki's life, constantly wrapping him up after every punt. On the second, Porter viciously slammed Gardocki into the ground with a legal block, which kept Gardocki on the turf for a few moments. Both while lying on the turf and later after standing up, Gardocki threw middle fingers to the Steelers sideline, later saying, quote, "Everybody knows who that was targeted for." The only punishment levied for this incident was a $5,000 fine for Gardocki. Ironically enough, Gardocki later joined the Steelers, helping them win a Super Bowl. In a 2019 interview with Steelers Now, he said that Porter couldn't have been a better teammate. Again, the definition of you love to play with him and you hate to play against him. In 2001, Porter picked up right where he left off. He helped Pittsburgh clinch the AFC's number 1 seed with a 13-3 record thanks to his 9 sacks and 16 tackles for loss, which ranked 5th in the entire NFL. He earned Defensive Player of the Week honors in October after he racked up 6 tackles, a pass deflection, and what would stand to be a career-high 4 sacks and a 17-10 victory over the Buccaneers. Not only were those 4 sacks a career high, but they were also a half sack shy of the Steelers' all-time single-game record. What Porter really loved to do was pick on the Steelers' rivals, as he had another 2-sack game versus the Ravens, plus a forced fumble, of which he had a career-high 4 on the season. And no shocker here, but he notched his first career postseason sack against none other than the Baltimore Ravens in the waning moments of a 27-10 win. Despite another superb season, Porter was still not rewarded with either a Pro Bowl or All-Pro nod. That would not come until the following year, when Porter put together the best all-around season of his career. Porter's elite 2002 season was best exemplified in primetime versus the Raiders in Week 2. This showing gets lost to history considering the Steelers lost by 13 at home, but Porter's performance that night was not only the best of his career, but also one of the greatest in franchise history, which holds a lot of weight considering the franchise in question. In the Sunday night affair, Porter notched a whopping 11 solo tackles, which was the highest mark of his NFL career. He also put up 3 sacks, which was tied for the third most in a single game in his career. He got under Rich Gannon's skin all night, and it wasn't just in the pass rush game. Porter also intercepted 2 passes, the only such game of his career, both of them stopping Raiders scoring opportunities at the goal line, one of which he also returned 84 yards before attempting to lateral it to Chad Scott, who raced into the end zone, but the score was called back to an illegal forward pass. And all of this came versus the eventual AFC champions, who had the #1 passing offense in football and the league MVP, by the way. To this day, Joey Porter is the only player in NFL history to record 3 or more sacks and 2 or more interceptions in the same game. For his effort, he was unsurprisingly honored with his second AFC Defensive Player of the Week award. It would have been the shock of the century had it gone to anyone else. And while he didn't quite hit that peak again, that's not to say that Porter still didn't perform at an elite level for the rest of the 2002 season. Immediately after this came his continued domination over AFC North foes. A week later, he intercepted a Tim Couch pass and returned it 27 yards versus the Browns, setting up a Todd Peterson field goal in a game the Steelers won by just 3. Just 2 weeks later, he had another 2 sacks of John Kitna against the Bengals, including another forced fumble which big Casey Hampton picked up and ran 36 yards with, setting up a Steelers touchdown. And 2 weeks after that, he intercepted his 4th pass of the season, a total that doubled the next best mark in his career, as he put an end to a desperate Ravens comeback attempt. Porter finished the season with 89 tackles, 9 sacks, 4 interceptions which he returned for a total of 153 yards, 10 passes defense, 2 forced fumbles, and 2 fumble recoveries. He was one of just 4 players to notch at least 9 sacks in each of the 2000, 2001, and 2002 seasons. He was deservingly named to both his first Pro Bowl as a starter and his first-team All-Pro, and he was also named a co-MVP on the team. For good measure, he also helped the Steelers win another 3-point game versus the Browns in the postseason, with another sack and 2 more tackles for loss.
You want my bucket off too? EA Sports. It's in the game.
From that 2002 high came a low point in 2003, however. He was forced to miss the first 2 games of the season due to an off-season incident in Denver. Porter was in town to watch his alma mater play Colorado on August 31st and visited a bar afterwards. A shooting broke out and 6, including Porter, were wounded while 1 died. Porter was shot through the left buttock. He said he was convinced that the bullet, which lodged in his right thigh, would have hit him in the most sensitive of regions had he not assumed a sprinter's stride while fleeing. Porter's rivalry with the Ravens continued in Week 1 even while he was inactive. He and Ravens star linebacker Ray Lewis started jawing in pregame when Porter was allegedly upset at Lewis trying to establish dominance over Heinz Field. In the Jim Wexell book, The Inspirational Story of Pittsburgh Steeler safety Troy Polamalu was quoted as saying, quote, "Joey Porter wouldn't take crap from anybody. When people came to our field, they knew this was our home field. Nobody was going to mess with us." So then in the second quarter, when Lewis mocked Porter's signature celebration, the boot, of kicking his right leg out after tackling Amos Zaraway, Porter did not hold back. The Steelers linebacker, still on crutches, said, quote, "I thought he kind of disrespected me. He came out here, he's doing the boot, and he's telling me this is his house. I think that's negative. You don't come and disrespect a man who's hurt. Why are you worried about me? I'm not even playing. Why are you imitating me?" That let me know he doesn't care. There were times when he was in trouble with the law, his shoulder was hurt, and I went over there and shook his hand and said, "Get through it." Yet he wants to make fun of me being hurt? I take that like a slap in the face. You never kick a man when he's down, end quote. Pittsburgh ran away with a 34-15 win, with the Ravens defense getting shredded by the Tommy Maddox-led passing unit. Porter continued unleashing on Lewis, saying, quote, "He didn't make a play all day. He caught himself doing the boot. He made 1 tackle. He's running around there, running his mouth, doing all that, but if you watch him on film and really look, where was Ray Lewis? He was nowhere to be found. I could have tackled the water boy and had as many tackles as him. He didn't do nothing today. He's all mouth. When you talk like that, that's what happens. You get hit in the mouth. He's over there crying now, thinking about what went wrong. You got your ass whipped, that's what." When informed of Porter's comments, Lewis said of the All-Pro, quote, "Why would I argue with Joey Porter? He's done nothing in this league." Lewis denied mocking him, saying that people have been kicking sand for years. Porter also allegedly confronted the Ravens near the team bus after the game and engaged in a shouting match. By the December rematch, the two had to be separated by teammates and officials alike after butting heads during the coin toss. In the end, Porter only missed 2 games and recorded both a sack and fumble recovery in his season debut. Despite what happened versus Baltimore, however, Porter said that the shooting incident turned down his trash talking for a while. Quote, "They took my mean streak out of me. Everybody's congratulating me. Oh man, I'm sorry about what happened. I can't sit up here and get mad at this guy who just got done telling me, man, I was praying for you and all this stuff. How am I going to curse out someone who just prayed for me? That year they were killing me, man. I'm like, damn it, stop telling me that." Eventually, Porter returned to his usual ways, however, and he has former Rams tight end Brandon Manu Maliuna to thank for that. Porter said that Manu Maliuna told him in-game, quote, "You're lucky it wasn't me because I would have shot you in the face," and that made him nearly jump the Ram then and there. Porter had his lone 2-sack game of the season in that matchup with the Rams. Overall, it was a lost season for both Porter, as he notched just 5 sacks in 14 games, the lowest effort of his career outside of his first and last seasons, and for the team as they went 6-10 and missed the postseason. 2004 would be a different outcome for both parties. The team blazed out to a franchise-best 15-1 record in 2004. The face of the resurgence was rookie phenom QB Ben Roethlisberger. He was indeed very efficient and clutch. However, he was not asked to do too much because of the Steelers' dominant defense, which led the league in both points allowed and yards allowed. Porter was named to his second career Pro Bowl as one of 9 Steelers who made the trip to Hawaii. Porter had 7 sacks in 15 games and was tied for 6th among linebackers with 12 passes defensed. Even in the first-round rookie QB's debut, Porter found a way to make him the talk of the town. Ravens tight end Todd Heap twisted his ankle late in the first half and could barely lift himself off the turf as he desperately tried to line up to prepare for a Kyle Bowler spike, which he did very gingerly. Problem was, he lined up directly in front of Joey Porter, who did not hesitate in pushing him right back into the ground at the snap. Ravens players were not happy, to say the least. Porter's old friend Ray Lewis said, quote, "It just shows what type of character that guy has. When you take a cheap shot like that and just try to hurt somebody, it goes way outside your character and shows what type of spirit he has." Porter, meanwhile, had a simple response, quote, "It looked like he was hobbling, but at the same time, I don't know if he was fake hobbling. I've seen a lot of guys that looked hurt and kept playing. They fall on the ground and get up and run a play. I didn't hit him, I pushed him. It's not like I took a cheap shot at him and ran in there and hit him. I pushed him with my hands. This is football." He wound up missing the rest of the game and the following 9 weeks of the season. On more than one occasion, NFL players voted Porter as one of the dirtiest players in the NFL, but Porter meanwhile just continued playing at a high level. His knack for the clutch moment showed up again in a muddy matchup with Miami in September when he strip-sacked A.J. Feely with 4 minutes to go to put an end to a Dolphins comeback attempt. Looking back nowadays, people mostly only remember Porter as an elite pass rusher, but he was much more than that, and that was never evidenced more than in his performance versus the Bengals a week later. Porter didn't record a sack and only made 3 total tackles, but he had not 1, not 2, not 3, not 4, but 5 passes defense. That's tied with London Fletcher for the most recorded by a linebacker in a single game since the stat has been tracked. The Steelers' biggest test of the season came on Halloween against the defending champion Patriots, who were riding an NFL record 21-game winning streak. And again, nobody stepped up bigger than Joey Porter, who had one of the greatest games of his life. The Patriots allowed the 5th fewest sacks in the 2004 season, just 26, and the man they call Peasy was responsible for 3 of them himself. The first came immediately after the Steelers took a 7-3 lead with a Ben to Plexico Burress touchdown, as Porter fought his way through blockers and stripped an escaping Tom Brady from behind in the first quarter to set up another quick Ben to Burress TD. On the first play of the second quarter, Porter quickly squeezed in between the hapless Matt Light and Joe and Jersey for a 10-yard sack of Brady, this one setting up a 3rd and 27 and eventual punt. His combination of power and get-off was unmatched at the time. Porter worked Matt Light so effortlessly all night that the Patriots subbed in Brandon Gorin for him at left tackle in the second half, but it did not help matters much, seeing as how quickly Porter beat him directly off the snap for his 3rd sack of the game. Oh, and on top of all of that, Porter also had his hands in 8 tackles during the game, 3 of which went for a loss. The Patriots got a quick score before halftime to cut the Steelers' lead to 24-10 at the break, and they received the second half kickoff, so there was some optimism on their side for a comeback. As he often did, however, Joey Porter immediately snuffed out all hope. On the very first plays of scrimmage of the second half, Porter dropped back into coverage and attacked running back Kevin Falk as soon as he caught a pass out of the backfield. He punched the ball free, which Aaron Smith recovered, and Jerome Bettis scored 4 plays later to balloon the lead out to 31-10. All of that amounted to another Defensive Player of the Week award. Joey Porter was a certified game ender. However, his other most famous moment from the 2004 season was when he ended a couple of players' games early, as in before they even started, including his own. Prior to a game in Cleveland in November, Porter was engaging in his usual trash talk across the 50-yard line to a bunch of Browns players, who largely paid him no mind. He later said of his process, quote, "I'll be out there getting myself warmed up, saying something like, 'Who are you looking at? You see something over here you like?' And then if the other guy says something slick back, there goes my huckleberry. I got him. That's the guy I'm going to target for the whole game." But their starting running back, William Green, had had enough and decided to send some of it back Porter's way, and things went off script. The two went helmet to helmet, and when Porter spit in the back's face, that's when the haymakers started flying on both sides, with numerous other players getting involved as well. One of Porter's punches landed, giving Green a bloody lip. Both players were ejected, and Porter was fined $10,000 but not suspended. The one bright side of this scuffle, Porter's absence led to the first start of undrafted James Harrison's career, who flashed a ton, which the future DPOI credits as why he finally got a shot later on.
You know, I appreciate Joey over there fighting and everything, getting me that start. That pop in Cleveland, you know, that was really when they got a little glimpse of what I could do, and you know, I thank you. You know, I appreciate Joey Porter for that. You know, my greatest supporter.
Thanks in large part to this Porter-Green midfield fight, the NFL instituted a new rule adding a 10-yard neutral zone between the 45-yard lines, rather than having the 50-yard line remain the line in the sand that separated the two teams. When Porter was asked if he considered himself an artist, he said, quote, "Yes, for the simple reason they made rules for me. The Joey Porter rule. I compare myself to Shaq because they say they brought in the 2-3 zone for Shaq. They brought in the 45-yard line rule for me." While Bill Cowher was disappointed in what transpired that afternoon, he also said, quote, "I don't want Joey to change who he is. He plays the game with a lot of emotion and a lot of people feed off that." Igniting the passion in his teammates is one of Porter's goals in trash talking. He said, quote, "Say I'm out there talking to a running back, and then he says something slick back. That doesn't only get me, but the rest of my 10 guys are like, 'What'd he say? Who said it? What?' And once they get to saying that, oh, not only did you tick me off, you ticked off every one of the 10 men that I'm with." Porter returned following the incident without missing a beat, recording 3 sacks over the next 2 games, 2 of which came in the fourth quarter, while the other was in the final minutes of the first half. He continued owning the Ravens as he notched another interception against them in their second match of the season, a 20-7 win. Pittsburgh lost handily to the Patriots in the AFC Championship, but Porter added to a streak of at least 1 sack in every playoff run of his career. Luckily, the 2005 season brought plenty more opportunities to add to that postseason streak. Porter opened the 2005 season on a tear, notching a sack in 4 of the Steelers' first 5 games, including strip sacks of Tennessee's Steve McNair in Week 1 and Jacksonville's Byron Leftwich in Week 6. Porter continued his reign as the father of the Cleveland Browns in 2005 by notching both a sack and an interception in a 34-21 win in the first matchup in November, before following that up with a season-high 3 sacks and a forced fumble in a 41-0 shutout win on Christmas Eve as the Steelers' late-season playoff push heated up. Pittsburgh won its final 4 games of the regular season to nab the AFC's final wildcard spot, with 2 of those wins coming versus the Bears and Vikings, who were riding 8- and 6-game winning streaks respectively, before being held to a combined 12 points in those 2 games. Porter tied a then career high with 10.5 sacks, which was the most among all linebackers in the league, and he also forced 4 fumbles and intercepted 2 passes en route to his second consecutive second-team All-Pro season and his 3rd career Pro Bowl. In order to reach the big game, the Steelers would need to go on the road and win 3 consecutive times before they could then attempt to become the first wildcard team to win the Super Bowl. Their first 2 matchups would be against the last 2 teams they'd lost to back in November and December, the teams who had put up the most points against them all year. Thanks in part to Kimo von Oelhoffen, the Steelers' defense jumped all over the Bengals in the wildcard round.
And at the same time, we're trying to make sure that this guy's all right. Their coaches pointing the finger at Kimo and saying he did it on purpose. You know, I just was about to have a little sympathy for you. But if you go take it there, I don't care if he's hurt or not. So, and let's go. Palmer is done. I hope you don't think Kitna's going to win the game for you. I was the bad guy once again. I laughed at the sorrows.
They sacked John Kitna 4 times, made him fumble once, and intercepted him twice. Porter teamed up with Troy Polamalu for one of those sacks in the 34-17 victory. But the biggest test of the season would undoubtedly come in Indianapolis the following week. The Colts beat the Steelers 26-7 the Monday after Thanksgiving. Marvin Harrison caught an 80-yard touchdown from Peyton Manning on the first play from scrimmage. The Colts never looked back in that game. However, Joey Porter was not impressed. Before their rematch, he told the press that the Colts were a soft football team. He told the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette, quote, "They don't want to just sit there, line up, and play football. They want to try to catch you off guard. They don't want to play smash mouth football. They want to trick you. They want to catch you substituting. Know what I mean? They don't want to just call a play, get up there, and run a play. They want to make you think. They want it to be a thinking game instead of a football game." He called Edgerrin James' 124 rushing yards a, quote, "cheap 100, and also said, quote, "I don't think they out-hit us. If they would have out-hit us, they would have just lined up and they wouldn't have done all the audibles every play. If you want to out-hit us, line up and play football. That's when you out-hit us. Line up, you get your people, we got our 8 men in the box, run the ball." Needless to say, that bait from Porter gave the 8.5-point favorite Colts plenty of bulletin board material to pull from.
And I'm thinking that's not the thing to be saying. I mean, that's the last thing you want to say to them. But he did, and we had to live with it.
Hey, I said, all right, guys, don't say anything. I said, Ben was great on Wednesday, and then they got the paper Thursday. Joey, why?
By me saying that, I'm not only challenging their team, I'm challenging our team to come and step up and have my back with me. I knew we would smash them.
But it was still the underdog Steelers who came out super motivated to begin the game, quickly jumping out to a 14-0 lead. The second highest scoring offense in football didn't get on the board with a field goal until there was a little over a minute remaining in the first half. The Steelers' D had the Colts' offense in shambles for the first 3 quarters. Outside of their field goal drive, Indy had gained only 36 total yards across 6 drives, with 4 of those being 3-and-outs. The Steelers scored near the end of the third to make it 21-3. But the Colts had Peyton Manning, and he led 2 touchdown drives to start the fourth, and suddenly it was a 3-point game after a 2-point conversion. But they did have a little bit of help in the process. You see, with about 5.5 minutes to go, Polamalu intercepted a Peyton Manning pass intended for Brian Fletcher that would have all but ended the game. He rolled around on the turf a couple times, got up, and then dropped the ball before falling back on it. The Colts challenged the play, and somehow the ruling was overturned. Incomplete pass, Colts ball.
I couldn't believe it. I said they're going to cheat on national TV in front of everybody.
Then Indy went down and scored to cut it to 3. They got the ball back with 2.5 to go deep in their own territory with a chance to win the game, and Porter was still angry about what transpired previously.
I'm so mad that I can't even talk. You got to picture me on the film, mouth just shut. I just could not wait till the next play.
So of course he took his anger out on Peyton Manning. On 2nd and 8, thanks to the O-line focusing on a blitzing Polamalu, Porter came unblocked on Manning's blind side and decked him before unleashing an emotional boot. On 4th and 16, history repeated itself. The Steelers blitzed again, which was too much to handle for the Colts, as an unblocked Porter and James Ferrier met at the passer at the 2-yard line. Porter walked down the sidelines shouting,
Refs want to cheat! Cheat that!
That certified game record wearing number 55 took it upon himself to put an end to the comeback attempt and back up all his comments from before the game. Later on, Manning said of Porter, quote, "Some guys in the NFL who talk like Joey are all talk, but not Joey. Joey's got Ray Lewis energy for 4 quarters. It's not wasted energy. He hits you as hard in the 4th quarter as he did in the first, which tells you that he backs up everything he says." He was right about Porter, but unfortunately football is a team game. The Colts had all 3 timeouts remaining, so the Steelers couldn't simply kneel out the clock. The usually sure-handed Jerome Bettis fumbled for the first time all season on the next play, and Big Ben saved what could have been a game-winning defensive TD by Nick Harper. Indy quickly got into field goal range before stalling, and the football gods were smiling down on Pittsburgh as the most accurate kicker in NFL history shanked the game-tying field goal. In the locker room after the game, Porter proved that there was nobody who'd better hype up a set of grown men to want to run through a brick wall.
Y'all backed up Peasy. Peasy came in here and said they was a soft bunch. We proved it. We proved it. That we were the tougher football team today. It's all about us.
You be quiet this week, though, Peasy, please.
It's all about us in this locker room. I got that. They shot me in Denver. You will not. You will not. That's 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. That's right.
Pittsburgh was on to Denver for the AFC Championship, but not before Porter could air out all his remaining grievances. He told the New York Times, quote, "I know they wanted Indy to win this game. The whole world loves Peyton Manning, but come on, man, don't take the game away from us. I felt they were cheating us. When the interception happened, everybody in the world knew that was an interception. Don't cheat us that bad. When they did that, they really want Peyton Manning and these guys to win the Super Bowl. They're just going to straight take it for them. I felt they were like, we don't even care if you know we're cheating. We're cheating for them. He also told the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette, quote, the way the refs were going, I wouldn't have trusted them in overtime. If we hadn't won, they would have cheated us in overtime. They wouldn't have to worry about any of that in Denver. While driving late in the first quarter, Denver made the mistake of putting a tight end out to block Joey Porter. He made them instantly regret that by bending around him and forcing the ball out of Jake Plummer's grasp. The Steelers recovered and quickly scored to make it to 10-0 game, and they never looked back, leading 24-3 at halftime and running away with a final of 34-17.
It was like, I cannot believe this. I'm going to finally play in the Super Bowl.
Much to Bill Cowher's chagrin, Porter wasted absolutely no time in sending trash talk the Seahawks' way prior to Super Bowl 40. But in his defense, this time at least, the other guy started it. You see, Seahawks tight end Jeremy Stevens was asked the question about Jerome Bettis' return to his hometown of Detroit to play in the Super Bowl, and Stevens responded by saying, it's a heartwarming story and all that, but it will be a sad day when he leaves without that trophy. That was all Porter needed to hear to unleash at Media Day, saying, quote, you ever seen the movie Underworld Evolution where the blood drips down there and it wakes up Marcus? Well, Marcus now got woke up. I was asleep all week, I just tasted blood right there. And you crave it when you haven't tasted it in a while. Now I'm thirsty. First, he simultaneously backed up his teammate while completely demolishing Stevens, saying, quote, he should know his role. He hasn't done anything that makes anybody fear him, while Jerome is a Hall of Famer and everybody knows about him. Meanwhile, this guy is almost a first-round bust who barely made some plays this year. He has the nerve to say what Jerome is not going to do when he isn't going to be the deciding factor whether that happens or not. I'm going to make sure he doesn't have anything to do with the outcome of the game. Stevens also said that Porter would have a tough time rushing against Seattle left tackle Walter Jones, to which Porter, of course, also took offense. Quote, now I'm looking for him on game day. Now I'm looking for Stevens. He has to line up in front of me, and that information you just gave me just got me started. So I'll be out there looking for him at the 50-yard line. That information will go a long way because he can't hide from me. He has to line up in front of me, and I'll remind him every time I put him on his back. I would think someone would say something, but I wouldn't think it would be him. He's too soft to say something like that. He'll have the opportunity to back up his words, but I'm going to have an opportunity to back up my words. Porter also promised to get as many Seahawks players to tap their helmets as possible.
The ones that you make don't want anymore, they tap out. You know what I mean? They start looking for ways out. They see there's nowhere to go, they just jump on the ground. They see nowhere to go, they run out of bounds. They don't want to fight for the extra yard no more. And that's how I want you to do. I don't want you to fight for the extra yard.
Tap out. That's when.
Yeah, you see in the Ultimate Fighting Challenge, they tap out. When they don't want no more, they tap out. When they get in the mercy holds and they fight in the Ultimate in the UFC, they tap out. That means they don't want no more, they submit.
And finally, Porter also asked this classic question to which the Porters had no response.
You was walking down the alley by yourself, who would you go take down the alley with you? Me and Stevens, tell the truth. You're lying, you're talking too long. You don't want to tell the truth. You lying. You know who you gonna take. Really, it's like Joey, Jeremy, you know what I mean? Joey, Jeremy. There's a big gap between them. It's a big gap.
In the end, neither player showed up much in the stat sheet on Super Bowl 40. However, Porter helped the Steelers hold the highest scoring offense in football to just 10 points, and MVP Shaun Alexander was held to over 30 yards below his season average. Meanwhile, Stevens caught 3 passes for 25 yards, including Seattle's lone touchdown, but he also dropped not 1, not 2, not 3, but 4 passes, including one on the Seahawks' last play from scrimmage, after which Porter continued to chirp at Stevens, saying, quote, you could have been the difference in the game, now you'll be mad all offseason. Eventually, though, Porter did decide to just celebrate what the Steelers had accomplished.
I mean, we've done it like nobody ever done it before. I mean, we rewrote the history books all the way.
World champions, baby. Don't get no better than this. World champions.
I had mixed emotions of wanting to cry and wanting to laugh and wanting to smoke a cigar, and I never kissed that many dudes in my life. But
now that he had a championship under his belt, however, Peasy had nothing to hold him back from speaking his mind at all times. And it wasn't just other NFL players he aimed his words at. Sometimes it was even the President of the United States. Ahead of the Super Bowl champion's visit to the White House, Porter said, quote, I got something to say to Bush. I'm going to have a swagger when I walk in there, too. I'm looking forward to it. I have something to tell him too. I don't like the way things are running right now. I feel like he has to give me some of my money back, so I got something to tell Bush. He also said, quote, "Man, I'm steady taking hits. I don't know who FICA is. At least let me get a look at them so I know what they look like. I need to know who I'm paying. I hear about Uncle Sam, but nobody's ever met him." Of course, comments about the president and the government were one serious enough that Porter had to walk back on them. He said he was just joking around with the media and would never do anything to disrespect the president. But through all of this, one thing was clear. Joey Porter was a bona fide star. From his incessant trash talk on and off the field to his elite play during the Steelers' playoff run to being a world champion, everyone wanted a piece of Porter, including Sports Illustrated, which featured Porter for their cover story of their NFL preview magazine ahead of the 2006 season. There, Porter dished on his process and rules for trash talking. "Research is the key ingredient," he said. "He's always aware of everyone's salaries and legal situations. If it's out there, he's using it." He also said, quote, "You can't talk to me if you don't play. If I'm jawing with someone else and you're running off to go on the punt team and you've got something to say to me, I'm going to say it. Don't talk to me, you're not a starter. You need to be doing something to have something to say. I don't even give those guys one-liners." Porter's teammates saw it another way, as linebacker Larry Foote said, quote, "He'll talk to people that don't play. He doesn't discriminate. He'll get into it with kickers, a hurt kicker, a kicker that was on injured reserve."
I just want to be the same guy every time, the villain.
The best bad guy you ever knew. Best bad guy they ever knew.
Porter has one line he will not cross, however. Mother jokes. You do that to provoke them to the highest level, but it's touchy with grandmothers. You don't really want to shoot the grandmas because you don't know if his grandma has passed. I haven't used the grandmas. There was a time Porter was the Steelers' defensive signal caller, but he was relieved of those duties because of how much he talked. But none of Porter's teammates would change a thing about him. Considering he played with Porter in college, in Pittsburgh, and later on in Arizona, Clark Haggans arguably knew Peasy better than most, and he had this to say about the man, quote, "When he steps on the football field, I swear his eyes change colors and he grows a couple of horns, like he's turning into Satan himself."
You can compare these other guys to me and say, I like him because he doesn't talk and Joey talks too much. But at the end of the day, you'd love to have a Joey Porter on your team. I know you would.
For as devastating as Porter's insults were, his tackles were even worse. Sports Science even did an entire segment to prove just how backbreaking a blindside hit from Porter was.
Joey Porter, you ready?
Ready.
We're going to finally find out how much force is generated from the blindside hit. Let's do it. We need a big hit from you. Is this pretty realistic?
I feel pretty good. I feel like I made a big hit.
Here's an inside look at the blindside hit. As Joey slams into his target at about 14 miles per hour, he delivers 1,160 pounds of force. That's the same amount of force as getting kicked in the back by the hind leg of a raging bull. As Porter drives forward into his target, the force is spread across his own pads, the quarterback's pads, and driven into the QB's body. The power surges through the dense muscle layers and into his spine. The backbone bends backwards, accelerating like a whip cracking and causing an unnatural motion in the head and neck. The result? Whiplash, and the force increases by the time it reaches the head. The reason a quarterback can sustain a hit like this is because the spine does flex. But what would happen if the spine didn't flex? What if it was rigid, like concrete? To put the Joey Porter hit in more concrete terms, we brought in the world's best concrete breaker, Paul Pumphrey. This is what it looks like to get blasted by a Joey Porter hit.
Just ask Tom Brady what it was like lining up opposite Porter as a first-year starter in the AFC Championship. Quote, "It was scary. Joey is one of the most physically intimidating players you'll go up against. He talks the talk, but he walks it too. He's coming after you hard every single snap. Now that I've gotten to know him, he's like my favorite guy in the world, but on the field, there's nothing he'd rather do than take the quarterback's head off." Porter proved that to still be the case in the 2006 season opener versus Miami, as he had one of the best games of his career. The Dolphins tried to block Porter with a fullback in the first quarter, and they got what they asked for with an easy sack of Dante Culpepper. Then, with the Steelers nursing a 4-point lead with 3 minutes to go, Porter dropped back into coverage and undercut a pass intended for Wes Welker and ran it back 42 yards to the house for the game-sealing score. Porter celebrated by giving his head coach a big wet kiss on the neck on the sideline. And for a good measure, Porter added another sack 2 plays later while the Dolphins were in desperation mode and celebrated by mocking Dante Culpepper's traditional dance, followed by a throat slash. Needless to say, the Dolphins were likely impressed by this performance. In Week 2, Porter gave us the most iconic team introduction of all time, imitating Dave Chappelle imitating Howard Dean.
The Big Nasty D, led by 2-time Pro Bowler Casey Hampton. And at the linebacker position, we have Larry Foote and James Ferrier. And in the secondary, led by Troy Polamalu, the Samoan headhunter. And we're going to win again. And again.
A couple weeks later, the Steelers only allowed 17 passing yards and 115 yards total versus the 2-14 Raiders, but they lost thanks to 4 turnovers, including 2 pick sixes, courtesy of their offense. However, Porter did his part with 2 more sacks of Andrew Walter, plus another interception. This was Porter's second game of the season with 2 sacks and an interception. Only one other player in NFL history had 2 such games in one season. For his entire career, Porter had 3 games with 2 or more sacks and 1 or more picks, which is also tied with 2 other players for the most in NFL history. Porter had his third 2-sack game of the season in a December win versus Tampa Bay, and they would wind up being his final sacks in a Steelers uniform. But the biggest development from the 2006 season came from Porter's budding feud with Browns tight end Kellen Winslow Jr. The two jawed at each other in pregame warm-ups before their game in Cleveland. The Steelers rallied with 21 fourth-quarter points to win that game, but not before Winslow threw a mean stiff-arm Porter's way. 3 weeks later in Pittsburgh, Winslow attempted to shake Porter's hand before the game, and Peasy rejected him. Porter took offense to that gesture, and a late hit Winslow threw James Ferrier's way. After the game, he said, quote, "He came up to me and tried to shake my hand before the game, but he doesn't know me. You're not my friend. Why are you trying to talk to me? He talks too much, and he doesn't do anything. He's weak. He's soft. He should move to wide receiver because he doesn't want to block anybody. He doesn't want to be a tight end." Porter also used a homophobic slur to describe Winslow in the process, for which he was fined $10,000. He apologized for his word choice and said that he never meant to offend anybody except for Winslow. Following the season, Bill Cowher retired for good and Mike Tomlin stepped in as head coach. The Steelers were moving in a new direction and they needed cap space for 2007 and beyond. The soon-to-be 30-year-old Porter, who was due a $1 million roster bonus in March, wanted a new contract extension and implied he would hold out if he did not receive it. Eventually, the easiest path for both parties was Porter's release. There were no hard feelings, however. Porter said that the organization had always been good to him, and Kevin Colbert said he knew Porter still had a lot of good play left in him, and that this was just sadly how the business works. That said, multiple reports came out over the years from various members of the Steelers organization at the time, from Najee Davenport to Mike Logan to Bruce Arians, saying that QB Ben Roethlisberger faced locker room issues during the 2006 season, and Porter was the one to address the elephant in the room. In the summer following the Steelers' Super Bowl 40 victory, Roethlisberger was involved in a serious motorcycle crash while not wearing a helmet. Teammates already allegedly had issues with his work ethic and sense of entitlement. Roethlisberger later admitted that he was not a good teammate early in his career. After an early 3-game losing streak, Porter unleashed during a team meeting. He reportedly said that Roethlisberger was, quote, "the last person in the building and the first person to leave, and was not dedicated to the team." According to Davenport, Porter also said, quote, "last year you used to hang out with us. This year it's like the Pittsburgh Steelers and Ben." The speech was reportedly so powerful that even Bill Cowher didn't say anything. Once Porter finished, he just silently walked out and everyone followed their leader wearing number 55. According to teammates, this demonstration helped Big Ben to quickly grow up and become a better leader, but Ben said that wasn't the case, saying, quote, "if anything, it made me despise Joey." Porter left Pittsburgh with 60 career sacks, which was the second most officially recorded in franchise history. When adding Pro Football Reference's unofficial sack data back to 1960, it was still the 4th highest total in team history at the time. He was the 5th unofficial player in NFL history and the 2nd official player to rack up 60-plus career sacks and 10-plus career interceptions. Only one other player has since joined that club. Considering Porter's versatility, it's no shock that he had no shortage of suitors as a free agent. Included among those teams interested were the Steelers' 3 AFC North rivals in the Browns, Bengals, and Ravens. But after Dolphins head coach Cam Cameron and GM Randy Mueller flew to Porter's home in their owner's jet, Porter was convinced to sign in Miami. He inked a 5-year deal worth $32 million with a $12 million signing bonus and $8 million guaranteed. Shortly after the signing, Porter found himself in the news once again for battling a former Bengal.
Check this out. Levi Jones sitting at a blackjack table. Porter and others come up and is a 4-on-1 mob on Levi Jones. It's not a one-on-one fight. This starts at a blackjack table, moves over by a roulette table. I mean, you hear about violence on the field, but taking it off the field is unbelievable. That is Levi Jones on the bottom. 3 people get on top of him right now. That's Joey Porter at the top of your screen. Now, I would like to emphasize that Commissioner Goodell, without ever seeing this videotape, has already stripped Joey Porter of 3 weeks' worth of game checks. So Commissioner Goodell not standing for any of this.
There are conflicting reports on who started it, how many people were involved, and who won, but the bottom line is that Porter received a misdemeanor battery charge after landing a blow to Jones' face. But back to football, Porter teamed with 2006 Defensive Player of the Year Jason Taylor to propel what was a top 5 defense in football the previous year to even greater heights. But from the jump, the season was a disaster. The Dolphins went 1-15 and gave up the 3rd most points in the NFL. Porter's most famous moment of the season was his continued beef with Kellen Winslow Jr. Before Miami's Week 6 matchup with Cleveland, Porter had this to say about the rivalry, quote, "It has kind of been one-sided. I've never lost to him. It's like me picking on my little brother." All Winslow had to say was, quote, "I think Joey Porter needs a hug. He's so angry, man," before taking the high road. "I'm not into the individual battle thing. It's a team thing. We're 2-3 and they're 0-5 and we're looking for a win. He doesn't have to worry about me. He should be worried about the team concept. They're 0-5 right now." Porter just continued being Porter, quote, "He is saying all the right things. Unlike me, I'm going to say how I feel." In a surprise to no one, Porter has the most all-around game of the season back at Heinz Field against his former team in a Monday night Mud Bowl. He notched his first interception as a Dolphin on the Steelers' first drive of the game, courtesy of Ben Roethlisberger. And he also had 8 tackles, 2 TFLs, and 1 pass deflection, all season highs. For the season, Porter had just 5.5 sacks, which was his lowest total since his post-shooting season. However, he had 4 of his 5.5 in the final month of the season, including 2 versus the 16-0 Patriots in Week 16, providing some much-needed momentum heading into the 2008 season under new management. To put into terms how much Porter turned it around in 2008, just take this. By Week 5, he had already matched his sack total from the previous season in which he played all 16 games. That was due in large part to a career matchup in Foxborough in Week 3, before which Porter told the Patriots exactly what he was going to do. Matt Castle stepped in at QB for the Patriots after Tom Brady went down in Week 1, and Porter did not hold back on the passer who had started 1 game since leaving high school, saying, quote, "I just know he's not a Tom Brady. So if it's not Tom Brady, it shouldn't be that hard. You treat him like a backup. How do you prepare for a backup? He don't get that many snaps, right? So you throw the kitchen sink at him. That's what we're going to do." Despite the Patriots winning their last 21 regular season games and the Dolphins losing 20 of their previous 21, Porter called his shot, quote, "It'll be good to go out there and get our first victory." And what did the Dolphins do? Throw the kitchen sink at Matt Castle and win their first game in a landslide. Miami unleashed the Wildcat for the first time on offense, and the defense notched 5 sacks and 2 takeaways, with a career-high tying 4 of those sacks and 1 of those turnovers via a forced fumble coming from Joey Porter in the 38-13 blowout victory. Fans of other teams can complain all they want about how much Porter talked, but you cannot deny that the man backed up what he said damn near every single time. This performance had to feel especially invigorating for Porter because his hatred for that team up north runs deep. Ahead of their second matchup, Porter was featured on Sunday NFL Countdown and said he's hated the Patriots since his Pittsburgh days because he felt they cheated him out of 2 AFC championships, saying, quote, "Come on, man, they've been videotaping for years, man. You cannot sit up there and honestly tell me if it wasn't working, why was he doing it so much? You're not going to sit up there and tell me if I'm a quarterback in my headset, I know where the blitz is coming. I know where my hots and stuff is at before it happens. I know what play you're running on defense. All you gotta do is be in the right position, just catch the ball. 2 times we could have blown them people out easily. They say, oh, Belichick is so smart. This is the best brainstorming coach. Yeah, because he's cheating. He got caught. If it wasn't so bad, why did he destroy the tapes so fast? We want to see the tapes. When you get rid of evidence like that, there was something in it they don't want everybody to see. That's my dynasty, you know what I mean? I could be sitting up here with 3 rings. This is the way I look at it. I played 3 AFC championships. Won 1, lost 2. Yeah, to me, just like they want to put an asterisk on everything else, yeah, I don't care what they say. They have an asterisk on them. At the same time, people that played against them on the field, we know who they got on that team beside Tom Brady. It's not like they've got a gang of dogs over there. They have a bunch of alright guys, you know what I mean? Not no just real dogs. He also expressed annoyance at the fact that the Patriots continued running the ball instead of taking knees while up big the previous year. Porter had another sack in that second game versus New England, but the Dolphins gave up 48 points and 530 yards of offense at home to the Castle-led squad. That was the one blemish on Miami's 2008 season where they were the ultimate Cinderella story. The Dolphins tied the record for the biggest single-season turnaround in NFL history, going from 1-15 to 11-5 in AFC East champs, and Porter was arguably the biggest reason for that. You see, with the new regime in town, the Dolphins switched from a 4-3 defense to a 3-4 defense in which Porter was more accustomed to playing. He notched at least half a sack in all but 4 games in the 2008 season. He had 2 sacks in back-to-back games against the Ravens and the Bills, and he also forced 2 fumbles in that latter matchup, one of which led to a safety. Then, in Denver, Porter couldn't help himself but to get into it with another offensive player. He and Broncos wide receiver Brandon Marshall were jawing at each other at the end of the third quarter and had to be separated by an official. The Dolphins won the game by 2 scores, Porter notched another sack, and Marshall had just 2 catches for 27 yards on 9 targets. So it's easy to say who won this matchup. But the beef didn't end when the game did. Afterwards, Porter said of the receiver, quote, "He's one of those guys that if you don't get the ball in the first 2 series in the first quarter, he's out of it. He had 18 catches in a game before, so he's not used to going the whole first half with no balls. We got in his head and he pretty much was done. I didn't get it inside, we were just talking. He got in his own head. He was done. He's one of those soft receivers where he has to have the ball all the time. If you don't get it, he's going to mope and cry. He did it to himself." Marshall didn't back down, however, saying, quote,
"He's definitely one of those guys who, all those muscles are popcorn muscles. He's soft. We hear stories, floating around the league all the time about him as far as, in nightclubs dancing with his shirt off like a girl or in the playground getting beat up back in California. So he's one of those guys that, no matter how big he is, he still can get knocked on his butt, and he's soft. He's soft at heart, and you can tell the way he's talking. His nickname is Peasy. I don't know what Peasy is.
But when we go to Pro Bowl, he gonna have a chance to eat cheese in front of everybody. Cause I'm coming there with my mean mug on.
What?
I'm gonna come in there looking at him just like this.
What if he just jump on you? And then what? What if he jump on you?
He go bow down.
What if he jump on you?
He go bow down in front of everybody. And I'm saying it right here on Best Damn Sports Show.
Ooh.
I ain't even worried about it. As soon as I get up there, I'm gonna come in, he gonna probably be already there. Everybody gonna be amping it up. And he see me, he goes look at my face and tell him I'm not playing. Then that's when I'm sorry, Joy. Then it'll be over.
But
I'm not gonna touch you,
you
but
just
I'm
scared the hell out of
scary.
me.
The 2 stars wound up hashing it out at the Pro Bowl, and ironically enough, later on, Marshall was traded to Miami about a month after Porter was cut, and wound up renting Porter's old house. But back to football, Porter's knack for the clutch was prominent in Miami as well. He sealed wins against the Raiders and Bills by taking down the QB as their respective teams mounted last-ditch comeback efforts. Then came the 49ers, and another player thought it was a good idea to rile up Joey Porter. Before the matchup, tight end Vernon Davis said of Porter, quote, "I'm pretty sure I've gone up against a lot of other linebackers, defensive ends who are better than him, and I'm pretty much won every battle." Keep in mind that at the time Davis said this, Porter led the entire NFL with 16.5 sacks. The 2 players had to be separated in pregame warmups, and Porter allegedly told Davis that he was the best at being ugly, and that he wasn't even good enough to be on the scouting report. Considering Davis wasn't much of a blocking tight end, the 2 didn't even match up much in this game. Davis had just 31 receiving yards in the tight contest, and Porter once again had the last word. On 4th and 10 at the Dolphins' 21-yard line with just over a minute left and trailing by 5, the Niners' hopes were dashed when Porter beat right tackle Adam Snyder around the edge at the snap for the game-ending sack. He flung his helmet off in celebration, which drew a flag, but I'm sure at that point he could not have cared less. Porter finished the 2008 season with a whopping 17.5 sacks, which was 7 more than he had ever put up in a season in Pittsburgh, and the best in the AFC that season. His mark still sits just one sack behind the shared franchise record between Jason Taylor and Bill Stanfill. He received 3 votes for Comeback Player of the Year and was named to the Pro Bowl and All-Pro team for the 4th time in his career. But despite finishing second in the league in sacks, he was merely second-team All-Pro because of the outstanding years DeMarcus Ware and James Harrison, remember him, also had. It was a stacked year in the pass rush department, and Porter likely would have run away with the DPOY in almost any other season. The Dolphins were humbled at home in the wildcard round against the Ravens due to their usually protective offense losing the turnover battle 5-1, but Porter unsurprisingly did come away with the ball for Miami's lone takeaway. If 2008 was a Cinderella story for Porter and the Dolphins, 2009 was like the rock and roller coaster at Disney World. The Dolphins started the season 0-3 and lost starting quarterback Chad Pennington in the process, but then they reeled off 7 wins over the next 10 games, before losing their final 3 to finish 7-9 and outside the playoff picture. Porter was named a team captain and once again led the team in sacks, but that number dropped from 17.5 in 2008 to just 9 in 2009. The highs were still there, like when he had a combined 4.5 sacks in a 2-game stretch versus the Panthers and the Bills. He also took down league MVP Peyton Manning, who was only sacked 10 times all season, but the Dolphins lost that game despite holding the ball for over 45 minutes in regulation. See what I mean about a roller coaster? Porter also reignited his beef with the Patriots, once again bringing up the cheating allegations and saying, quote, "I have a natural hate for them, period, and that's just going to be with me forever." Porter also went after Tom Brady specifically, saying, quote, "When a guy can tell a ref when to throw a flag and he gets it, he's got his own rules. They made the rule that you don't go at the legs for Tom, so when he feels that someone is going at his legs, he just points to the ref and gets a flag." At the time of their matchup, the Dolphins were 3-4, and the Patriots, with their quarterback back in the fold, were 5-2, but Porter didn't like to talk regarding the two teams. "The division goes to the last champion, period," he said. "The last champion was the Miami Dolphins. We have the championship until we lose it. It's ours to lose. You can't just crown the champion because they used to be champions back in the day. That hardly makes any sense. It's what you did the last year. You're never judged off what you did a couple of years ago. It's what you're doing now. Last year, we were the champs." The Patriots won that game and eventually won the division, with Porter failing to record even a single tackle in that 27-17 loss. Porter caught flack for avoiding the media after the game, and he caught heat from head coach Tony Sparano, who made him a healthy inactive for the following week's game against Tampa Bay, cited as merely a coach's decision. He returned after that 1 week off to play his best ball of the season down the stretch, including nabbing a sack and fumble recovery in the season finale versus his old team. There was clearly a lot bubbling under the surface, which Porter made sure to let everybody in on as soon as his season came to a close. See, throughout the season, Porter was frequently subbed out for younger pass rushers Cameron Wake and Charlie Anderson, to which he took offense. Porter appeared on the Jim Rome Show ahead of the Super Bowl in Miami to express his dissatisfaction with the franchise. Quote, "I thought the situation could have easily been fixed, but it's a situation to where they want to play the younger guys. They want me to be a rotation guy. I got a lot of football left in me to be a rotation guy, you know what I mean? I don't get paid like a rotation guy, so I'm not going to take that role." He said that trading him would be the best action to take for both parties. Quote, "Why keep a guy there that you want to make a role player? You're paying me as a starter, so why pay me all that money and make me a role player?" He said that all Tony Sparano would tell him is that he had to play his young guys and that he wouldn't let Porter stunt their growth. Porter said he accepted that role in 2009 because he was a team guy, but he couldn't accept it anymore. Quote, "But after seeing how last year went, to ask me to come back and play that role again, I can honestly say that I won't come back and do that. I can't be happy about coming back and playing that role." Porter continued on the Miami radio station WQAM the next day saying, quote, "You got a Pro Bowl player asking to play. If you just let us fight for the job, it's not even an argument. No shots to nobody, but it's not even an argument. All them guys in my room, love them to death, but outside linebacker, I'm the best one we got, period. There's nothing to even talk about. Who am I switching with? Who should I be switching out with any of them guys?" Porter's teammate at inside linebacker Channing Crowder was even baffled, quote, "If the game's on the line, I want my 2 Pro Bowlers coming off the edges. That's my mind as an inside linebacker. If I see different guys out there not bad-mouthing anybody, I'm going to be like, Peasy, you straight? You good? You healthy? JT, you straight? You healthy? Why aren't you all out there?" Porter didn't have a problem naming names, however. He later said, quote, "If you want to put Cameron Wake in the game, go ahead and good luck to you. Let me go find a new job somewhere." The undrafted Wake went on to make 5 Pro Bowls and rack up the second most sacks in Dolphins history. Porter said that he frequently checked out of games after being distraught at sitting on the sidelines for quarters at a time, and he even channeled his inner Ricky Watters in his frustration, quote, "It's hard for me to accept that after being Pro Bowl just a year ago, 17.5 sacks, making the All-Decade team, all of a sudden I'm taking backseat. And for who? For what? Explain that to me and I'll have a better answer for you." Porter said that the Dolphins' higher-ups made him feel like a ghost in a facility, quote, "I went from being a defensive captain and talking to the coach every day to not talking to the coach no more. Only time I talked to him was on game day. I was talking to nobody, seeing Jeff Ireland and Bill, and nobody's saying nothing to you no more. You just kind of feel like an outcast. The writing was on the wall for me." Even legendary coach Don Shula came out to lambaste Porter for his behavior. But Porter stopped by the NFL Network set one last time in his media tour that week and confirmed that he would never wear a Dolphins jersey again, quote, "If it was a situation where the guys were better than me, then you just have to move on. But it's not a changing of the guard. They just have to sit and wait their turn. Nobody is that good enough behind me to be stepping on my toes. When I was in Pittsburgh, I knew Harrison was getting better. It was a question of how can we pay both of these guys because Harrison can do what Joey can do. I understood that. That is not the situation here. It's a big drop-off." Joey Porter, at 33 years old, was a free agent once again. Porter signed a 3-year, $24.5 million deal with the Cardinals in March 2010. The final 2 years of Porter's career were pretty quiet, both in terms of on-field production and all the usual trash talk between. Porter racked up 4 sacks in a 3-game stretch in mid-2010, including 2 against Brett Favre and the Vikings, but he only had 1 other sack all season long. It was clear that Porter had lost a bit of his explosiveness by this point, and the compounding injuries did not help. He missed the final 2 games of the season while dealing with a triceps injury. Porter had to agree to take a pay cut from $5.75 million to $1.75 million to return for a second season in the desert, but it was more of the same. He notched just 1 sack in the team's first 6 games before chronic knee injuries forced him out for the rest of the season. Nobody was shocked when he announced he would retire, signing a 1-day contract with the Steelers so that he could do so as a member of the franchise that drafted him. He said, quote, "The last 2 years I tried to play and I wasn't out there as healthy as I've been in the past. This year I knew my knee wasn't getting any better as far as this season. It made the decision kind of easy, actually." While always a team leader no matter where he went, Porter took on even more of a mentor role during his time in Arizona.
Roll call, baby, you already know what it is. 1, 2, 3, LB, 4, 5, 6, 7, whoa! Let's go! Whoa! Whoa! Wake up! Come give me some! Okay. Let's go! Clap for your brother. Love now. Stop. Love, baby. Clap for your brother.
We're trying to get it to a close-knit unit because in this defense, if you don't have confidence and play for your brother out there, it really doesn't matter.
Hooray! 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 Let's ride on 3. 1, 2, 3. Let's go!
It's going to come to a time where the roles change. You know, I came in 99, I was a rookie. I had Jason Gilden and Levon Kirkland, Earl Holmes, and Carlos Emmons. And when Acho or O'Brien, or whether it's Darryl Washington, whether it's any of my young linebackers that's in the game, I always try and tell them everything I know.
Hines in motion, run. They're running the ball that way.
I mean, I'm not going to hold anything back because of competition. 9 to 10 years later from now, they'll be doing an interview. I'll be sitting at home with my kids, coaching my little league team, and I'll watch an interview and I'll hear O'Brien and Sam Macho talking about, yeah, I remember when I first got in the league, Joey Porter helped me with so much. He helped me develop into the player that I am now.
So it's no surprise that Porter's first step upon retirement was to enter the coaching sphere. Porter first joined the Colorado State coaching staff in 2013 so that he could also work to finish his undergraduate degree in liberal arts with a focus in social studies. Quote, "Getting my degree is the biggest thing. It's good for me to have. It's good for me to stress to my kids I went to college but didn't graduate. Now I can finish my whole story." Then, a year later, he returned to where his NFL career started, joining the Steelers as a defensive assistant under Dick LeBeau. He said, quote, "It's a place I couldn't be happier to be. There are 2 places I wanted to coach, CSU and Pittsburgh, and in 2 years I've been able to accomplish both. I'm truly blessed."
I'm a coach like I played. I mean, I'm a coach with my emotion.
After the season, legendary LeBeau resigned, and linebackers coach Keith Butler was promoted to defensive coordinator. Thus, Porter was promoted to the team's outside linebackers coach. As coach, he brought the passion and emotion that he had promised.
Hey, we was going through a stretch, right, to where we wasn't playing with that Steeler passion that I knew as I watched everybody play with. You know what I'm saying? Like, no, I can't make this up. was in the defensive meeting room one time, man. I was like, man, y'all don't get excited when y'all make plays. You know what I'm saying? Y'all don't. I said, man, we used to make a play and just wait for all the brothers to come and beat our helmet up.
William gave pick six to A.J. McCarron in Cincy, tying the Steelers' franchise record for such plays in the process, and began a lengthy but iconic celebration involving countless teammates and sprawling from the end zone all the way to the sideline. Even as the referee was announcing the excessive celebration flag, Gay was still celebrating unbothered with none other than Joey Porter as the two swam to each other on their knees before embracing. A truly priceless moment.
Hey man, I got a big old picture of that in my wall, man. Like, that was one of them coaching moments to where, like, I wanted to play that day, Jack.
I already know. I can tell.
That was one of the days you missed playing.
Porter's most memorable moment of his coaching career once again came in the form of tormenting the Cincinnati Bengals. To make a long story short, the Steelers were playing in Cincinnati in the wildcard round, trailing by 1 with about half a minute remaining while at midfield. Bengals linebacker Vontaze Burfict launched himself into the defenseless receiver Antonio Brown helmet to helmet, drawing a 15-yard unnecessary roughness flag. As Brown was eventually helped off the field by the Steelers training staff, Burfict attempted to put his hand on Brown's shoulder and was quickly brushed off and scolded by the Steelers trainer. Porter, who technically wasn't supposed to be on the field, stepped in between the two with his hands at his sides. Then Wallace Gilberry came into the picture from a ways away to shove Porter in the back and into the crowd of other Bengals players. From there, Burfict grabbed Porter, Gilberry chest bumped him, and then the forever calm and composed Adam Pac-Man Jones came in swinging. Throughout the entire incident, Porter barely said a word and merely stood back with a smirk on his face. He was playing chess while the Bengals were playing Minesweeper like a child would. For Pac-Man's actions, the Bengals drew another 15-yard penalty. The two penalties set up an easy game-winning 35-yard field goal for the Steelers. Following the game, Pac-Man took to Instagram to deliver an iconic post-game rant, incidentally throwing a former Raiders receiver under the bus.
Fucking refs did a horrible fucking job. You got fucking Jerry Porter in the middle of the fucking field talking shit to everybody, and then when somebody say something to him, he don't even supposed to be on the fucking field.
Porter was issued a $10,000 fine for the incident, which led to a second quote-unquote Joey Porter rule. That rule, instituted ahead of the 2016 season, expressly reinforced that only head coaches were allowed on the field during games, and that it was solely for the purpose of monitoring injured players. Porter coaches 5 seasons in Pittsburgh, with his other most notable incident being getting arrested following a Steelers playoff win, though 4 charges of aggravated assault involving a police officer, simple assault, resisting arrest, and defiant trespass were dropped in time for him to return before the next week's game. After a drama-filled season all around in Pittsburgh in 2018, Porter was the first of many Steelers to be let go. In an appearance on NFL Network, Porter once again criticized his former QB in the midst of the Roethlisberger-Antonio Brown drama, saying, quote, "It's clear he has the power, and how he uses it for him. You want your locker room to love you." Despite how unceremoniously both of Porter's tenures in Pittsburgh ended, however, nobody can deny that he is a certified Steelers legend for life. He's not remembered as fondly as many other linebackers and pass rushers of his time, but he was every bit as good in his prime. He was given the esteemed honor of being named to the NFL's All-Decade team for the 2000s. He's one of just 5 defensive players out of 21 that are eligible for the Hall of Fame but are not yet in. For that 10-year period from 2000 to 2009, only Jason Taylor had more sacks than Porter's 90. Porter is also very consistent, notching 9 or more sacks in 6 seasons in the 2000s. Taylor, with 7, again was the only player with more. In fact, Porter was also the only player to register at least 5 sacks in every season from 2000 to 2010. Porter also had 113 tackles for loss in the decade, which was the 3rd most among all defenders. His 12 interceptions during this period ranked 4th among outside linebackers and edge defenders, and he was also 7th in passes defense. He was elite in rushing the passer, elite at stopping the run, and elite in coverage. At his peak, Joey Porter was a complete player and truly had no weakness. To speak more to that versatility, when including the postseason, only 3 players in NFL history have 100-plus career sacks and 10-plus career interceptions. Lawrence Taylor, a first-ballot Hall of Famer and arguably the greatest defensive player of all time. Julius Peppers, who has a very good chance of being a first-ballot Hall of Famer when he becomes eligible in 2024. And, of course, the one and only Joseph Eugene Porter Sr. So with all this being said, does Porter himself deserve Hall of Fame consideration? Why is it that his candidacy has never really received any backing following his retirement? He's always merely placed in the Hall of Very Good basket. Well, for one, he's usually first compared to the man who succeeded him, James Harrison. Harrison, who won a Defensive Player of the Year award and had perhaps the biggest play in Super Bowl history, usually wins the tiebreaker between great Steelers edge defenders from the 2000s, to be included in the Canton discussions. But you might be surprised when comparing their career numbers. Despite playing in 5 fewer regular season games, Porter actually has 13.5 more career sacks than Harrison, 4 more interceptions, and 1 more fumble recovery. He also doubles up Harrison in terms of passes defensed. Porter also ranks higher on Pro Football Reference's approximate value metric. They have the same amount of All-Pro nominations, and Harrison has just 1 more Pro Bowl. Harrison wins in terms of forced fumbles and solo tackles. Granted, Harrison spent a chunk of his early career as a special teamer and a chunk of his later career as a rotational player, but the fact that these numbers are the way they are, while the perception is the way that it is interesting. Porter is also within just 2.5 career sacks of the numbers Hall of Famers Charles Haley, Alex Karras, Andre Tippett, and Willie Davis put up. He has more career sacks than Howie Long, Bryant Young, Merlin Olsen, and Leroy Selman, just to name a few. Of course, sacks aren't the end-all be-all, and there's always additional context to consider even within those numbers. But you have to consider that Porter was both the vocal and on-field leader for a Super Bowl champion, a defensive-oriented one that fought through a ton of adversity. In a different system, he was the same leader for a squad that tied for the best single-season turnaround in NFL history. And even after he left Pittsburgh, his effect was lasting. As Larry Furt once said, quote, "Through my time in Pittsburgh, there was no better leader. He wasn't on that second Super Bowl team, but his imprint was still on that team, and it still lives in that locker room a little bit." His leadership carried down to the Harrisons and the Palomalus of the world to keep that engine running. I'm not here to argue whether I think Porter will or should get into the Hall of Fame. I just thought I'd lay out the case for all you to ruminate on for a bit. As Porter's legacy lived on in Pittsburgh following his departure, it still does today in a different manner. After a tremendous career at Penn State where he led the nation in forced incompletion rate in his final season, Porter Jr. was seen as an almost consensus first-round pick before the 2023 NFL Draft. However, all 31 first-round picks came and went on that Thursday night without Porter Jr.'s name being called. A disappointment to be sure, but his father did what he did best to console his son, give an emotional and motivational speech.
Motivation, right? They want to see a pissed off football player. Now they got one. You see what I'm saying? So now follow me when I say, when I be giving you little nuggets about what we got to do and how we got to work. Just follow me, because this is what be part of the whole motivation now. Because you know where you're supposed to win and all that. We ain't got control over it. That's why I was trying to prepare you for anything, because I already know anything can happen. I know how the drives go. But what I'm telling you is, now you've been motivated to another level. Because we got some proof. Yeah. Hell yeah. And take it personal, as you should. But you ain't did nothing. You know what I'm saying? You did everything you were supposed to do. No, you ain't letting nobody down here.
In the end, it all worked out for the best, as thanks to a trade with the Bears, the Steelers had the first pick in the second round.
With the 32nd pick in the 2023 NFL Draft, the Pittsburgh Steelers select Joey Porter Jr., CB, Penn State.
It was like a fairy tale.
To me, he was my superhero, being a role model, sticking by my side through thick and thin. And when everything's not going right, he'll pick me up and just lead me in the right direction. He's always been doing that since I was a kid, and I wouldn't be here without him. So I'm happy to be a Steeler and put on that jersey just like him. I love you, man. Thank you for doing everything you've done for me, everybody in the family. You push us to another level that we wouldn't even think to reach.
Nobody's going to be rooting harder for Porter Jr. to succeed than his father. The young corner said, quote, "My dad's been there before. He's done it. I want to do the same thing and just be better. That's the main thing. He always told me he wants me to be better than him, so that's what I'm going to strive to do." It has always been about family first in Pittsburgh and in the Porter household.
Porter and his wife, Christy, have 4 children, Jayla, Jasmine, Joey, and Jacob. But it's Jasmine who has tugged at his heartstrings from the time she was born.
We had Jayla, my oldest daughter, and then we had Jasmine. First was just like, you know what, Jazzy isn't moving as the speed of Jayla was when she was 1 year old. So we kept taking her to the doctor, and they were saying, you know, she's developmentally delayed. We kept running tests and found out that she was autistic. That opened our eyes a lot, because at least give us something that we know what's really going on and how we can help her from this point. And once we did that, we could start
getting the right help that she needs.
The Porters had insurance, financial stability, and the resources they needed for Jasmine. They came to the realization that not everyone is that lucky.
It's a lot of people that's going through the same thing that we are, but they don't have the people. They don't have a children's hospital. They don't have the resources that we have. So how can we help the normal person have the same resources we have?
I thought, well, if I can't find adequate care for Jasmine, why not create it? If I'm a parent and I'm going through these issues, I'm sure there's hundreds of other families going through the same problems that I am, as finding quality care. Welcome to the Jasmine Irene Education Center in Bakersfield, California. Come on inside.
The school is where special needs children from kindergarten through 6th grade can get the attention, the teaching, and the development they need.
Because it came about to once Jazzy got to a certain age, we couldn't find a school that wanted to take somebody for a whole day. So they would take them from like 8 to 12. So if you're a working person, we needed something that people can have a normal day, like 8 to 5. We just created an environment where you can safeguard those kids and the parents can feel good, where they know their kids are taken care of while they're at work.
We have a new student starting today, so he's a little bit shy and really doesn't want to engage, so we'll see how his day goes for the rest of the day. Can I get a high five? All right.
Mark, what's going on, man? There it is.
You want to say hi?
Is he a new student?
Yes, he's new today. Today's his first day.
So everybody say hi. Hey. Everybody say hi to Mark.
Hi, did you see Isaac?
Everybody say hi.
Say hi to Mark.
Hi, Mark. Hi, Mark.
Hi, Mark.
So, welcome to the Jasmine Irene Educational Center, where you'll be learning manners and other things.
Oh, Mark. That's what I'm talking about.
Mark.
High five, yes.
And also, in here.
We try to learn as much as we can about not just autism, cerebral palsy, deaf, blind, Down syndrome, everything you can think of. We want to make it a home for kids who have special needs, to where when you walk into the school, nobody's just staring at you. You know, we've had our daughter just be stared at, and that's an uncomfortable feeling for everybody. Where can they go to where they're not the kid who's just been stared at the whole time?
We also have after-school programming for children here in the community, where our facility will double from a day program for special need adults during the day and an after-school program in the afternoon for children. All of our services are also 100% free to the individuals who are receiving those services.
One of the kids in there, he loves to come here and play basketball, and we put the rims just high enough so where he can still have fun, dunk the ball, and shoot the ball. It's fun to watch the competitive spirit come out of them too. I ain't letting you dunk on me. I don't want to dunk on you. I'm gonna put the jumper in your face. You know, God had a plan, and he made her how she is for a reason, because it made me and my wife do homework on stuff that we never would have done before. And we end up helping a lot of families because of our situation. So it all happened for a reason. It makes me feel good, like how me working for the Steelers makes me feel good. I know that we're helping people. And when you know every day that you're helping somebody, kid, have fun and not know that something's wrong with them because they get to live free, it's a beautiful thing.
Everybody knows about all the big hits and all the constant trash talk, but most people, save for those who truly know him, don't see that Joey Porter has a huge heart. Whether it's creating this school for kids and adults with special needs, or whether it's something as small as always looking out for his teammates and coaches. Before playing the Lions in 2005, Porter, along with Kimo von Oelhoffen, came up with the plan for each defender to wear a Detroit throwback jersey of defensive coordinator Dick LeBeau's old number 44 from his playing days to honor the legendary coach. They did the same throughout the season for Bill Cowher with Browns jerseys and Keith Butler with Seahawks jerseys. And the big one, of course, was the whole team wearing number 6 Notre Dame jerseys in honor of Jerome Bettis before his final NFL game in his hometown in Super Bowl 40. And there was never a question as to the ringleader of the entire operation. As James Ferrier put it, quote, "Joey's treat. He always has some inspiration for us." And Porter also was the mastermind behind the ultimate tribute for the bus.
We had our strength coach, Jeff Furman.
He comes in and tell you offense is going to be introduced or defense is going to introduce. And he said, you know, they're introducing us as a team. Well, basically when we're home in Pittsburgh, Jerome Bettis would always come out last, do his bus rumble, get the fans going crazy. You know, that was his last time running out the tunnel in the biggest game he's ever played in his career at the Super Bowl in the city he was raised in. We started talking amongst each other. Like, I was like, hey, I'm going to tell Jerome he's leading us out there, but nobody run with him. I just came to him like, hey, Jerome, man, we got you this far to the Super Bowl. We want you to lead us out the tunnel. So you go first, we coming right behind you, you know. So he was like, okay, as they introduced the Pittsburgh Steelers, he's running, and you know, he's thinking the whole team is behind him, but actually it's just him. So when you see the film of him yelling and screaming, he's turning around, he's screaming, and he's looking for people, he's like, oh my God, I'm really out here by myself. So he just have nothing else to say, but he kept screaming. And then we followed him out. And he has that small chance, that small window to run out there by himself and let the city of Detroit embrace one of their own as we got ready to play in the Super Bowl.
Joey Porter was that player who barked the loudest, but he also bit the hardest and loved the hardest. For a solid decade, he was one of the top players of one of the most dominant defenses the league has ever seen. He was a versatile defender who could do it all, and yet he never gets the credit he deserves, likely because people just have petty gripes with his brash personality. And Porter understands that. He once said, quote, "That's just the nature of people not liking me. I would hate me too if I was on the other side." But I'm sure he wouldn't change a single thing about his career. Joey Porter will be remembered forever as a leader, a champion, and a father whose legacy will continue to live on.